Welcome back to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guests, that's right, we have two at once today, are Todd Ford and Alli Clark, who are both current students at New England School of Barbering in Penacook, New Hampshire. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
So Todd is a co-owner of Hello Hairco in Londonderry, New Hampshire, with his wife, and he has been a gym owner for 10 years previous to going to school, and has been in the restaurant business for basically his whole working life. And Alli is a future barber at Hello Hairco
That's right.
and was a bartender before this. So both of you have phenomenal credentials when it comes to working with people.
Lots of customer service, yeah.
True story.
So do you think that has helped in your decision to pursue barbering? Because I know it's kind of a departure from working anywhere near food or drink.
Yeah, it was actually like one of the main reasons I decided to do barbering. As a bartender, I just loved working with people, but not so much drunk people, I guess I could say. Yeah, just hearing people's stories and learning about people's past and what they've gone through and how they got here. And it's just really cool to be able to spend time with people like that.
So Todd, how is it kind of different from going from the gym setting to a barbershop?
It's definitely different. I think just the service aspect, there's still that service. You know, you're servicing a client, making them feel good. So there's a lot of carryover, actually. And I did have some experience at a previous salon that my wife owned. I was the head of operations there for a little bit. So that kind of eased my transition into this world.
So Alli, I know we've had previous conversations when I go to the barber school about your experience being a bartender and how that's helped you with talking to people right out of the gate. But how has it hindered you?
You know, I don't know. I think that's like my biggest advantage is being able to just talk to someone right away. But I do find that in a bar setting, especially a sports bar that I used to work at, there tends to be a lot of inappropriate joking going on, and transitioning to a barber, you kind of have to know your audience and especially keep an eye if there's kids around, and kind of have to hold myself back a little bit. But it's been great so far.
Well, and especially that you're in a school setting as opposed to a shop where you can learn those lessons in a fairly safe environment.
Exactly.
So tell me, I know you guys have future plans. I want to know the thought process from barber school day one compared to now. Like, what's the difference? Like, what were the things that were not expected, and what were the things that were like just different?
I'll give that one to you first.
So in regard to what I knew compared to what I know now, or what?
Not just what you knew, but also like what you were expecting. Like, you know, the curriculum or certain experiences or dealing with people that was just like not part of your thought process when you first started.
Sure. Okay. So I admittedly knew very little about the barber world. I actually was toying around with the idea of going to cosmetology school. And then when my wife and I decided to work on Hello Hairco, we decided to go in a direction that sort of blurred the lines between salon and barbershop. I had no clue what I was in for signing up for school. I actually just assumed it was going to be easy, to be honest with you. I really thought I was just going to walk in, grab some shears, throw a cape over someone, and cut hair. And I think that was the first abrupt lesson that I learned.
Do you immediately find more respect for what your wife does?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm kind of on the same page as Todd there. I thought it was just cutting hair. When I was going into it, I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm going to be awesome. It's going to be a piece of cake. Which, like, I'm not even going to say day one. I would say, like, maybe hour one, I was proven wrong that it was going to be easy, because it definitely wasn't. I've come a long way since I started, of course. You never stop learning, but yeah, it's been a challenge for sure, but I'm still there. I feel like in my family, like I've been known to be like the quitter, like I never follow through with things. And like Mr. and Mrs. C, like if I didn't have so much respect for them, and like we've definitely formed a relationship over time, I would have been out of there by now, but still kicking.
I had my first meltdown on day 2. It was like hour 11 total. And I was like, Mrs. C, we were outside. I just stepped out of my truck. And I was like, Mrs. C, do you have a minute? And she was like, you're not quitting on me. And I was like, no, I'll let you know when I'm quitting. And that, like a tough guy, right? And then you go in the office and she talks sense into you. And I just, like I had said, I just thought I was going to grab tools and cut. And I did a head shave for my very first haircut, and I don't know how I didn't cut the guy because my hands were like shaking. I could feel my knees shaking, and I'm like, what is this? It's been so long since I felt that, new at something.
Truly
So,
nervous.
Yeah, really nervous. And of course, being from or coming from the service industry, you just want the person to be happy. Like I wasn't even worried about myself. I'm like, is this guy having a good time? Is this too much? Do I suck? Like, all those things go through your head, and then you're done, and you have your meltdown and move on.
Well, and I feel like there's that not only physical but just mental gap between providing service when it comes to food or beverage. That is like, all right, so the worst thing that could possibly happen, with this customer is this, and it's really just quality of food, quality of service, like those things. They're very arm's length.
Right.
But when you're dealing with somebody's hair, somebody's face, there's an element that is like, I don't want to hurt this person physically or mentally, because if I mess up their haircut, they're going to freak.
Yeah.
Because if I got my haircut messed up, I would freak.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, and I think that's the most, what's the word? The most basic form of empathy that is like thrust upon you. Like you're not even trying to feel it, but you do.
Yeah, it's definitely really personal. And I think I kind of find myself as a pretty big empath. And I haven't cried yet because of Mr. and Mrs. C, but I've had some clients like really open up to me while doing a haircut and just straight up started crying right at the chair. But it's something I'm working on, and can't be doing that all the time. But you connect with people like that, and it just feels like super special when someone opens up to you that much to tell you about a tragedy that happened, or how they just got over cancer and this is their first haircut since their hair grew back. Like, it was just super cool.
Well, and my personal experience in barber school is very opposite of most people. You guys have a very, I would say, majority experience of how people go through barber school, which is great because it means that you're on the right track. You go, all right, so I'm having barber dreams every night, and and like at least 2 or 3, and that's a really good sign of going, all right, that means you're in it. You are steeped in it all the time, and if you're not having those, there's a problem, because it means you don't actually care about what you're learning. And those won't go away for a couple of years. Fair warning.
Great.
But for my personal barber school experience, it was very opposite because, number one, I didn't have the nervousness that you experienced day one, hour
Right.
one. Just by virtue of my background coming out of the military and into that situation where it's like, all right, coming from a job that's worst thing that could happen is somebody dies, to worst thing that could happen is I mess up their haircut. So that being an alternative, like vastly different than going from restaurant or bartender situation where it's like, food, or I mess up the drink or something.
Yeah, big time.
So, but I also had a very regimented view of like, all right, I'm used to taking orders. So I'm used to having faith in the person above me who's mentoring me, that they know what they're doing, and all I got to do is whatever they tell me, and it'll be fine because they know what they're doing.
Right.
So I had no hesitation when Mr. and Mrs. C told me to do something to just do it. I go, I don't know what's going to happen, but they told me to do it,
Yeah,
so
you
I'm going to do
got
it.
You have to
No
do that.
problem.
It's really interesting. I just passed that. I think we were talking about this the other day, Alli and I. I just passed this point in this journey where I'm no longer afraid. So whatever walks through the door, if I've done it or not, if I've never done it, it doesn't matter. I'm not afraid. I'll tackle it. And obviously I'm at school, so I have
A safety net.
support. So there's a safety net, where before, I don't know if I was the type to run and hide in the bathroom, but that's the example that.
Like you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely was like.
I
yeah.
definitely did.
Oh,
Not only did I
do you
want
see a
to.
flat top? I see a flat top.
Yeah. Oh no, a flat top. Where now I'm like, oh cool, flat top. And same thing with shaving. I'm just not afraid to shave, especially as I learn more about the tradition and we talk about it a lot at school, how it's important to carry that on.
Right.
And if we don't do it, it's either going to get taken away or somebody else will be able to do it. And
It's true. Learning to value what makes your profession different and not taking it for granted.
Recently, Todd and I were going around and interviewing barbers that went to New England School of Barbering that now own their own shops or have worked in the industry for a while, and just like hearing people's stories and how like so much stuff they've carried on from school was just so cool to hear. Keeping the tradition alive and
That's one of the great things about this podcast, being able to talk to so many people, and not just from New England School of Barbering, is really seeing the difference in someone who has had mentorship and had a great connection with somebody who's teaching them and pushing them. Because as you were talking about, Alli, one of the reasons why you're still there is because you've created a relationship with them. So that balances out how hard they're pushing you.
Right.
And you're willing to be pushed further because you have a connection with them. You're not just going to fall. You have a rope connecting you to where they won't let you.
yeah, exactly. And I know at the end of the day, we can still go down the road and have a beer and laugh together after a tough day at school, which is cool.
it's important too, like, you're not being pushed just because. You start to realize, like, oh, I'm being pushed because I can handle this now, or, you're questioned on something that you're completely right about, and you shouldn't be questioning yourself, but you're looking at your blade choice, and you're like, why do I have this?
Yeah.
And Mrs. C is amazing at that, as I think we all know, but you're right, but she wants you to know why you're right, and
Because that makes you confident.
yes, the confidence and I guess it just goes back to the willingness to be pushed because you're ready to learn.
Well, and the overarching reason from a teaching perspective, in the importance of knowing why, is that when you are posed with a problem or a situation, because you know why you use or don't use something, you can then know all of your tools and what they do and how you can best address that situation. But until you know why that's a good or bad idea because of what it actually does, then that doesn't help you. It's like, all right, well, I have that tool, but I don't know when I need to use it. I just know that I can.
It's like comparable to like when you're a little kid and you have like a fork, knife, and a spoon in front of you. You have no idea what to do with it. That was like me when I started barbering. Like they give me this huge toolbox full of tools, and I'm like, the only thing I recognize here is a spray water bottle, and now it's like using a fork, knife, and a spoon. Like I know what each one does.
Yep. That's a great comparison. And as you were saying before, Alli, being very empathetic naturally. So when I was in school, though I am very much naturally empathic, I've spent a lifetime, for various reasons, creating lots of barriers.
Yeah.
So when I was first in school, and feel free to ask the Karens about this later, I had like a permanent poker face. Like I was not expression giving, personable,
Yeah.
much really at all. It was like, get the job done. That's it. Like, that's what I'm there to do.
Right.
Because I had been like that for the past, like 3 years before. And it's the get a job done. Because in the military, you don't really have to be nice unless you're in public relations. But
Right.
it's no, that's your order. That's what you do. Okay, do it. Bye.
And it doesn't like people that haven't worked in customer service or service industry before, it's not like a natural thing that that just exists. Like I definitely think it's a learned thing to be able to continue good conversation and get to know your client. And
Unless you have like extraordinary parents that taught you how to have long form conversations with total strangers, like that is definitely a learned skill.
yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I'm still learning it because outside of the barbershop and this situation, I could hold a conversation, but I probably won't.
Don't talk to me.
My wife always says that too. I've talked all day, and that's my cue to just chill out.
Yes, the introverts are like, I'm going to my own room now. Bye.
Done for the day.
She's really great at listening, but I think a lot of times she's like, I just did this all day, and now I have to listen to you talk about what you did all day because it's still so new, to me that
Yes.
everything gets shared,
How do you you said you worked with your wife for a little while before this, right?
Yes.
How well did that go with your situation? Like, did you guys end up having clashes sometimes, or do you have
Like home
great
life type of
communication?
deal?
Or like crossing over, just being around each other all the time?
I think it went really well. I mean, there's definitely some hiccups along the way, but I think that's normal, totally natural. It was really brief. I was there for 3 or 4 months, and before we decided to just move in this direction and do our own thing. But yeah, it went really well. I don't want to use the word arguments, but I guess it's technically argument. But we've had arguments about hello and just how we want to do different things. And I think we had an argument about coffee, put it that way, how we wanted to serve our coffee, because we're very detail oriented, and it's important to for us to have a guest walk in and have a certain experience. So we were arguing for maybe like a weekend.
We like to call that a spirited discussion.
Yes,
Exactly.
we can go with that instead of argument. Sure, call it whatever you want, but it happened. And then at the end of the day, I won, and we're going to have amazing coffee service when we're allowed to serve coffee someday.
It's important,
Speaking of, since we're dealing with wonderful COVID still, you guys had the unique, one-of-a-kind experience
Yes.
of doing remote learning during the quarantine. How do you think that went? Now, for context for our audience, I was one of the instructors for you guys during the quarantine, so please don't hold back anything. I want to hear honest feedback, and so does our audience.
I'm not exactly sure if Mrs. C would want to hear this, but there was definitely one point where I had alcohol in my coffee in the morning because
boy.
I just might have not been ready for it that day. It was interesting though. I mean, I've never been in that kind of learning setting before, so it was weird to be sitting at home and still learning the same thing I would be doing at school, but I'm at the same time super thankful that we got to make up for those hours and be able to continue, because I felt like if we had stopped completely, I would have came back like it was day one again, which I felt like a little bit, but I still got it.
Well, even just stopping at 2 weeks in the middle of a school program, you feel how rusty you are.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you think it went for you, Todd?
It's such a weird time right now. I honestly, to describe it, I almost have to start with like a thank you, because I know there were times, there were days that were so hard, and I'm like, how serious is this outbreak? And now we're ordered to stay home and businesses are closed, and I'm freaking out. And then I have people that are like, okay, let's learn today. And I know they're having the same feelings and emotions and all these doubts, and they're dealing with their problems. And some days, like Alli had alluded to, I just wasn't into it. I think that's normal, though. But most days, I will say that I was thankful for that connection with people and to be able to open up my laptop and see some faces, or some ceiling fans. We had some people aim their cameras in interesting directions. And I think overall, though, it went really well. And I know that everyone did what they thought was best in that situation.
Right.
And so I'm thankful for that, for sure.
And I mean, it was unprecedented, right? This entire year has been unprecedented.
2020.
So it's the year of adaptation.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, like, as of was it today, California has closed all
Just
service
closed, yeah.
businesses again. And, some of our previous guests are affected by that and some of our future ones too. Um, how has learning and cutting hair in the barber school since opening back up with our restrictions here in New Hampshire been? I'm sure it's been a learning process, as everything has been, but I'd like to hear your guys'
Yeah.
experience.
It was definitely frustrating at first. It was basically guidelines changing daily. It wasn't just like, it's going to be like this, go ahead and send it. This is how it's going to be. Different things every day, whether it was wear a mask or wear a cloth covering or don't wear this type of mask, do wear this type of mask. And just like adapting to, it's difficult when you can't see somebody's facial expression. I don't know if you're happy with me. I don't know if you're smirking under there or if you're pissed off. Like, it's hard to tell just with eyes. It's definitely was a difficult adaptation, but I mean, you do what you got to do and you make it work.
Now, how have you guys done with customers coming in? Because, I mean, you got New Hampshire is the second oldest state population-wise in the Union, so we have a lot of people over the age of 50, especially in the Concord area where you guys are. How's that been going?
I think, well, I was ready for, not, I don't want to say war, but just, complaints and people just not being happy. And I think we had one, maybe two people leave because they didn't want to wear a mask. And that's totally fine. There was no exchange or anything like that. So I think overall it's gone a lot better than I anticipated, for sure.
Yeah, I think same with me. I was like expecting some mean words. For the most part, people that didn't want to cooperate just turned around and walked away or just didn't come at all, which is fine. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but...
Well, and I mean, ultimately everybody has a choice to make. Like,
right.
Correct. Yeah.
it doesn't matter where you live or what country on earth. Like, you still have a choice as a human whether or not you want to do and don't do something.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of customers are very understanding because they know that it's out of our control. Like, we are mandated to require things. Not that we wouldn't require them necessarily at this point, even if it wasn't mandated, but it's less of a, oh, your business, I'm going to boycott it, and it's more of a, hey, talk to the governor.
Right.
Like, that's their decision. I just want to keep my license.
Sure.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think a lot of people have, at this point, we're a month and a half in, and they've started to joke about it with us, about the masks especially, because, well, I'll just be blunt, a lot of the rules are silly. So.
Oh, you mean like beard trims and shaves?
Yeah,
Well, didn't you know the coronavirus hates beards? So as soon as you take the mask off and they see the beard, it's like, you'll never get the
It'll
virus.
wait, yeah. It'll wait. It doesn't come out when you're doing a beard trim. So, but yeah, like even with that, they just like we had someone show up this morning and he didn't have a mask, and I noticed, but I just assumed it was in his pocket or whatever. And then he asked for a shave, and I said, "Oh, sure, come on in. So and so can take you. He's going to be your barber. Do you have a mask? I need you to put it on to walk to your chair, to then take it off so that you can get your service. And then I'm going to need you to put it back on so that you can walk out, because that's the rules." And he just laughed, and we made it happen. He grabbed a mask. It was no big deal. But at this point, we just throw our hands up, I think, and play along with the regulations.
Well, and I think having the communication with your customer, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, yes, we have a mutual understanding of our positions given the rules we have to follow, but we still have to follow them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, in our position, we can joke about it because we just are not hit that hard. Like, we're not in areas that are devastated with really, really high numbers. So we have the luxury of having the position we have. And because of that, our regulations are arbitrary at times. Not necessarily effective, but it is what it is.
Right.
But there are lots of people, in California and Florida, Georgia, and all over the place,
Yeah, it's
39
crazy.
states where, cases are still rising, where their whatever precautions that their state is requiring of them is for a good reason.
And this might sound, I don't know if I should use the word selfish, but I feel like this should have happened beforehand. But I think the first moment I realized that I made the right choice in becoming a barber is when the entire world shut down and everyone just wanted a haircut. like no one cared about anything else. They were like, I just need a haircut so bad. Like,
It was insane. I had people calling me, and I'm a student.
right.
And people are calling me, can you cut my hair? What will it take? I'll come to your house. And I'm like, no. First of all, I'm not even allowed to cut hair outside of school. But no, just stop.
I don't know where you've been.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know how to cut your hair. But at that point, it is interesting. This just clicked in my head that when we came back after COVID or after our quarantine, since we're still in COVID, but that break, I don't know what it was. Maybe that's when it clicked. Things started clicking for me, but I thought I was going to be devastated. Like, I thought everything I had learned was just going to be gone. But it was almost like I was more calm. I don't know if it was just dealing. Maybe I was just crazy and wanted to get out of my house. And I was like, give me some haircuts. Or a combination. I don't know what it was. But when I came back, I was like, this feels, I don't want to use the word easy because I'm not at that level yet. But I felt a lot more comfortable and calm than I thought I was going to.
Well, I think I like to compare that to pain. It's you broke your finger. All right, that's pain. Like, it's some pain. Mm-hmm. But then you break your leg.
Yeah.
And you go, you know what? Broken finger's not so bad.
Yeah, exactly. I would like to break another finger instead, please.
So I think that's kind of what it is, where it's like when you started out in normal times, air quotes, it's like, all right, this is nerve-wracking. This is super, like, I have to care about this. And then when, like, the world decides to go upside down, it's like, all right, learning to cut hair, not so big of a challenge. Because at least I know my path out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's such a crazy time. It's wild. Yeah.
Well, and, having a structure and knowing that there's an end in sight and all of those things that are mentally very reassuring. Obviously, we still have the frustrations and everything that we have in any educational situation, like whether it's high school or college or anything that you're learning, there's frustration and there's struggles and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you know that there is an ending and you know that there is a goal. When it comes to the world right now, we ain't got that.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like everything is just like pretty unsure.
Very.
Yeah.
When we were locked down and things were, not that we were locked down, but quarantine, and the dates kept getting pushed back, and then you're like, wow, there's so much uncertainty. And I have 3 little kids, so we were doing remote learning and all that, and so we had to become teachers on the fly. And I have a total new respect for teachers, by the way, shout out, because they pivoted and made our kids' days with their Google Meets and all that stuff. It was amazing. But I don't know, it's really cool to see an industry like hair come together, but also like every other industry, because you have to figure it out. We have to get through this as a people, it's a global thing. So.
Right.
Well, and there's an unfortunate reality of the tolerance level of people, which is about 90 days. Mm-hmm. Which I've talked about before on the podcast, where it's like, all right, we can suck it up for 90 days on things that we would otherwise not. And we have gone well past 90 days in this entire situation. So we've seen people get ugly and show who they are and what they really feel on certain things. And you've seen people just blow up out of frustration, and that people are very stressed, and that's not necessarily who they are in their heart and at their core.
No, they're scared.
But there's so much stress and mental health strain that, everybody's felt it, and people have experienced different things in their life and cope in different ways. So it's definitely important to have an understanding and some compassion for people.
Yeah.
But it's definitely moving forward now that we're past that nice bubble where you really see people's true colors and go, all right, the ones who are really supportive, like really supportive, are the ones that you see supporting each other now.
Right, exactly.
Agreed, 100%.
Which is far more it's impressive to me the longer this goes and the more you see that happen, because that's like the true reality of it. You go, those are the people that will stick together and help each other out, and those are the ones you want to have on your team. Those are the ones whose phone number you want to have on speed dial.
Yeah, for sure.
And those are the people that you want to strive to be like, I like to think. Is like, I'll be honest, I am not nearly as cool or handy as a lot of people that I know. And I'm very fortunate to know those people. But I hope to try and get there one day.
Yeah, like forming a network like that is so important, like having patience with people through this whole process. And yeah, just being understanding of how these people are feeling, because everyone's taking it differently.
Well, it definitely goes into like surrounding yourself with who you want to be. Like you need to surrounding yourself, especially as people new in the industry, with people who know more than you, who can grow you, who can help. Now, because you guys are in, a unique situation where Todd is already a co-owner of a hair establishment, and you are going to be working for that establishment, how do you guys plan on continuing your growth when, in the barbering aspect, when you are otherwise surrounded by people on the other side of the aisle of the profession in cosmetology?
Right.
Sure. So I think one of the things for us is that education is super important, and it's part of our core values at Hello. It's a big part of who we are, where we come from. Jen, my wife, educated right out of school for several brands. And I think that that's definitely a driving factor that'll keep us pushing. Jen and myself, I agree, probably everyone agrees that if you start to teach something, you become better at it as well. It helps you to understand it differently and see it through other people's eyes. And I have a lot of the stylists at our business are already asking me questions, so I'm already showing them some stuff, and it's just the desire to stay ahead. Really, is for myself. I will never be done being a student ever. So for me, it comes from within, and then also wanting to bring everyone up with me that's around me and my team and help them grow the best that I can. So
Right, and I think Todd and I are on the same page with the whole, with the fact that as we leave to work together, we're going to be growing together kind of at the same rate. I don't know if I should say at the same rate, because maybe I'll learn something new and I share it with him, and he learns something and shares it with me, or he becomes an educator for something and I do something different. And it's just sharing knowledge as you go, not only with each other, but like people you work with. And yeah, like Todd said, just to never stop trying to learn, because there's always something out there that can be like a new experience. And
our whole business is based around that. So Hello Hair Co., a lot of people just assume is company, but it's collaborative. And it's always been important to us that you go and learn something, you bring it back to the group, And of course, we don't force people. Like, you don't have to be an educator. Like, if you're coming here, you're an educator now. No, that's not what we're saying. But we definitely attract people that want to do those sorts of things and push themselves and never sort of settle. So.
And I think a lot of people, when they think of like hairstylist or barber, the first thing that comes to mind is like, you get to do your own thing and make your own schedule and be your own boss. And I think it's like important to be independent, but I think it's also important to have a team there for that support throughout your journey.
Definitely. Curious just for the long term because, I mean, I think everybody goes into barber school because you ultimately cross that line and make that decision with something in mind. Uh, Obviously, Todd, you and your wife are moving forward with it like from the start. Alli, what are your long term goals? Like, 5, 10 years down the road, like, are you wanting to work at a particular establishment for a long time? Or are you wanting to specialize in something? Do you want to open your own? Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely ramble on about this for so long because I have so many ideas in mind.
Bring it on. We got time.
All right, let's go. So the first thing my first goal is to get, I would say before I say anything, eventually I would like to open my own shop. I think it's important to have experience under your belt before taking on that challenge. For me personally, it's because I don't want to ever have to ask someone else a question. I want people that are working with me to be able to come to me and be able to provide that support for them, I guess, and be able to know the ins and outs of the profession without being like, I don't know, I just learned how to cut hair. So that's definitely on the list. I would love to travel. Besides the color texture services stuff, one of the reasons why I did master program is so I have that 1,500 hours in case I decide to transfer them to another state. I mean, I've had dreams of living in Oregon for years now. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but if I decide to, that I have that choice there for me. But yeah, long-term goal would definitely be to open a shop eventually, but for now, I want to gain all the knowledge and experience I can before I take that on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I always think it's a great idea from a shop owner perspective to know what the people that are working at your establishment, what their goals are. That way you can help them achieve that. And Hello Hair Co. sounds like a phenomenal place for you to really get that fill of knowledge because that's obviously in the direction they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's backtrack. I really, really want to know how you decided on barbering compared to like any other service because I mean ultimately just by my personality type personally I've slowly found out that I could really enter any service focused profession as long as I'm making somebody feel better that's not medical related. As long as I'm making somebody feel better than when they walked in,
Right.
I'll be satisfied. Like that satisfies me in a professional capacity. How did you guys end up deciding on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, it just feels good to make someone else feel good. It's nice to go home and kind of feel like you made somebody's day. But I don't know. Like, it was definitely a roller coaster for me. Like, I feel like as soon as you get out of high school, you feel like you need to be on the same train as everyone else, getting off at the same stop. And it's not necessarily true. I think I felt that pressure as soon as I got out of high school to go to a 4-year college, live on campus, make new friends.
Party for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Not only because my 2 sisters did that, but because high school friends were doing that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then I ended up staying there for like maybe 3 months. I don't think I went to one class. It just wasn't for me. And I kind of learned then I didn't have to be on that train and I could take my own life route to figure out my own journey. But yeah, it started with, because I've worked in restaurants pretty much most of my working career. And I knew for a fact I could never sit at a desk. I knew for a fact I couldn't go home smelling like booze and grease for the rest of my life. And it really all goes back to the fact of making people look and feel great. Like I'm still in school and it's already rewarding. So I know I'm pretty confident that I made the right choice there.
Well, it's nice to know that that's what satisfies you, like in your heart.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like, all right, you did a full day's work and going like, all right, I'm tired,
Right,
versus like,
exactly.
I feel like I did a good job today.
Even if you are exhausted by the end of the day, I'm exhausted, but all those people feel awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's like effort is rewarded.
exactly, yeah.
What about you, Todd?
I guess so. My story, I guess, starts at my gym. There, I had owned the gym for about 10 years, and I've been having feelings that it was time for just a change. Nothing wrong happened, nothing bad happened. I just was sort of done with that chapter. And my wife one day said, I'd love someone to come on board and help take our salon to the next level and help run the business and all of that and, blah, blah, blah. And she was looking at me and I'm like, wow, she's waiting for an answer to a question that she hasn't asked. And I said, and she was like, so would you do that? And I was like, well, I would have to close my gym. I'm not going half in on something at this point in my life. It's just not worth it for me. And by worth it, I mean, it just doesn't excite me to I want to go all in on something or just not bother with it. I don't have
splitting
time.
your energies is just...
Yeah, not for me. So I made the decision in a 24-hour period to close my gym. And I started at her previous salon right immediately after. I tidied things up with the business, closing things down and accounts and all that, and then jumped in. I started speaking to the coolest people, honestly. I was talking to COOs of big companies and talking to brands and talking to reps, and at the time we were in a Veda concept salon, and then were approached by L'Oreal to come on and work with them, and they just presented, and then I found myself at a hair show down in Boston, and I was like, these people are cool, but I don't speak this language. It just wasn't clicking all the way. So what I did was I actually created an ambassador program at the salon where I had ambassadors that could almost translate for me because I didn't know the language, I guess there's no other way to put it. And so they would help me understand, how to talk to these brands and things like that. And then fast forward, I was down in Boston, and I had this happen a bunch of times, but someone from one of the brands actually was like, Todd, do you do hair? And I said, no, I don't. And she looked me dead in the eye and said, you will. And so that night, within a 24-hour, period of talking to Jen and deciding, we had already decided that Hello Hair Co. was a thing, but we hadn't fleshed out exactly what it was. And then it became, how do we blur the lines with barbers and stylists, and how do we, elevate the service game, and how do we take all these things in? And it was a whirlwind. And then we toured New England School of Barbering, and here I am. Yeah, that was really it.
I feel like a whirlwind is what catches most people into the profession, at least the serendipitous way that you end up at New England School of Barbering. Because that is not a typical experience for most people in the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
The school itself?
Yes, because if you really think of it, going, all right, this is Podunk, New Hampshire to the rest of the country. All right, they know nothing. They don't even know where we are on the map.
Yeah,
They
what's
confuse
New
us with
Hampshire?
Vermont all the time. They're like, Boston? Yeah, right?
Sure, we'll say Boston.
Yeah, sure. Sure, Boston.
And we know that, and we've adapted to it, and we've come to appreciate it. And this is coming from somebody who's not a native to New Hampshire. I like it here.
It's nice.
So thinking of really the vast majority of people in the industry in the country alone, not even talking about the world, just the country, like continental U.S., all right? And how many more corporate educational institutions there are versus mom and pop shops. And really the way that, funding and financial aid and all that kind of stuff works, and what you end up having to do in order to achieve that and grow. Like, it's kind of an uphill battle, more so for private establishments than it is for corporations, right?
Right, yeah.
So having the bigger picture of going, all right, so way more students are pumped out by corporate educational institutions,
Sure.
right? And that's not necessarily to say that they don't get a good education, because I'm sure there's tons of people who have gone to those that are phenomenal at what they do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like, great masters at what they do. But it's so unique here in our little state, a state that only used to have one barber school, and at some point didn't have a barber school at all.
Right.
You had to go to Maine.
And we're thankful for that journey.
And the 12 students, per class type of a thing that go through that school, and the quality of students that come out, and what they've done in the last 10 years that school's been open in the state, going from 600 barbers in the state to probably pushing 4,000 at this point. And it's not only due to New England School of Barbering, but I would garner a guess to say the lion's share of shop owners today is from that school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that is such a rarity compared to the rest of the country, that it's like you don't realize it when you're experiencing it, because it's such a personal thing to you, and like your struggles, what you've gone through to get there, and the craziness that happens inside, and getting to know these people, these two people that care so much about the profession, to do this and to put up with all the stress and crap that goes along with it in any business, let alone a freaking school with
Yes.
adult learners. And just recognizing how unique that is in a point in time, in a location, in touching the lives of individuals, and how crazy that has a ripple effect. Because we now have graduates that are across the country in totally different states, in Oregon and California.
It's amazing.
All over, and it's like they have grown so much in such a small amount of time, conceptually speaking.
It's really cool. I remember, not that it was super long ago, but with the quarantine and everything, I feel like I lose track of what happened before the lockdown.
Everybody.
Time-wise.
We know
I'm
things
like, when did I
happen, but we
start
don't know when.
school? Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, I remember when I did my tour. I came up, and I brought my wife because I had no clue what I was looking for. And then I met Mrs. C, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I actually had called one school. I don't even remember what school it was. And I said, I'd love to take a tour maybe, or meet someone and talk about your barber program. And they said, we don't do that. And then there was this awkward pause, and I was like, thanks for your time. And I hung up, and then I went, and I had actually talked to a few people, and then one of them was one of our product reps, and she said, this is where you have to go talk to these people. And so that was Mr. and Mrs. C, and I did, and it was game over. I asked Jen when we were still in the parking lot, should I go to another school just to compare, and there was an F word in there, and she was like, what the F are you looking for? It was so obvious to
Why?
her, how passionate the school was, and the detail. She was like, I learned something while I was there on a tour. I've been doing hair for 20 whatever years, and I think it might have been folding the cape or something that was going on. She's like, holy shit, and I'm folding the cape oh, cool, okay, I'm gonna implement that. But yeah, it's cool, very cool.
And I definitely, when I was beginning to look into this career path, I didn't have that person to come along with me to know what they were looking for. It was a straight up trust your gut kind of thing.
Flip a coin.
And yeah, I brought my dad, because his, one of his, I wouldn't say concerns, but he was like, how does the money work if she quits, kind of thing. Because that's what I was known for.
Logistical questions.
Yeah.
Those matter.
And
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we were both they seem like great people. They seem like they're passionate about what they do. And it was pretty impressive to see the work that some of their former students produced years and years later. And I'm like, okay, if they've pushed out all these students and they're all successful, they must be doing something right.
Well, and it's funny thinking back on my first impression of the school going, because as I told you guys earlier, it's, for me, it was, they were closed for 3 months. I called them the day they opened. I made an appointment for the next day, and then I started school the following day. So it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I'm here.
So it really took your
Boom.
time. Yeah.
And but here's the thing with me and my personal situation in life is that anytime something is right with me, it's always fast. Like barbering, military wasn't quite as
Like
fast.
when you know kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very like just recognizing that a door's opened and not hesitating to walk through it because you don't even know how quickly it's going to shut. And it's just like, oh, I guess I'm moving this way. Okay. It's kind of like a river flow. So it's always been very serendipitous for me. And this is one of those things where I went and I talked to Mr. C because he was the main guy at the time. I didn't see Mrs. C until like the first or second week. And he's giving me the selling spiel in the way that he does it. Like, you and I both know, but the listeners don't necessarily, that
We know.
he is not a salesperson. He just rambles on about what he loves,
Yeah.
and tells you why it's a good idea for you.
All right, sounds great.
And it works.
It does.
It works so well.
When it's genuine and sincere, it works.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, yeah, okay, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm also here to sign up for school. I've already made up my mind. Like, you don't need to sell me on it.
Right.
Just give me the
It's
paperwork,
already
please.
done.
But before I even walked in, I had this picture in my mind, because you have that expectation from high school and college and all that kind of stuff of, all right, you have an admissions office and you're going to fill out paperwork and they're going to, check your credit or, all this kind of stuff. And, there are offices and chairs and not a bunch of power tools lying around and banging happening in the background, like is reality. So what I
Parts
walked
of
into,
barber chairs everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, Franken's chairs just strewn about. So what I walked into was nothing like I expected, and I was kind of taken aback a little bit. I was like, oh, all right, well, this is not what I expected, but that's okay. And, day 3 of them being open, they happened to have one opening in their class after being closed for 3 months. And they had never taken a GI Bill before, but they were approved for it. And they were willing to take a gamble on me because they were unaware as to exactly how slowly the VA works. So I was very fortunate in all of those things to just like, boom, it happened. And it just
and here you
flowed right
are.
in. Same thing happened when I bought my shop. Same thing happened when I needed to move my shop. Like the move, the decision and everything all happened in like 2 months. Like the renovation, the whole thing. But that's my experience.
Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who have had very similar experiences, not so much with how crazy things flow into like where you're supposed to be, but definitely the difference between knowing that you're meant to be in this profession versus just having a job.
Right, exactly.
And I think the major difference is how your foundation is made and having that connection of being willing to be pushed really hard rather than quitting. Because let's face it, Alli, we're gonna do hard truth.
Yeah.
If
I'm in.
you went to a corporate situation where there were 20 students
Nope,
in
I'm
your
out.
class, like, and had to go through COVID, how far
Like-
would you have gotten?
Regardless of COVID, I would have been done like so quickly. You have no idea. And I hate saying that about myself because it's not a quality that like I'm proud of the past, but not to toot my own horn, but I am proud of myself for sticking to something, and I never realized like how passionate I was gonna be towards barbering. It just kind of happened. But yeah, no way I would ever stick through with anyone else at all.
Well, and don't you find how passion is contagious?
Oh, yeah, for
especially
sure.
in this kind of profession.
Yeah.
Like, if you are taught and surrounded by people who are crazy about what they do, you can't help but be crazy about it too. And then you find your own fire, so that once you're away from those people, like if you are really meant to be in this profession, that'll keep burning,
Right.
even on your own.
And then someday, like, another backtracking again to like setting goals for the future and whatnot. I like to think of myself as a leader, and I like love working with people, and I would love to eventually be an educator of some sort, mentor people, just because I feel like even years from now, I'll still like carry that with me, which is cool to even think about, because I feel like cats is like the only thing I'm passionate about at the moment. Pizza. Cats, yeah, cats and pizza.
Okay.
But
We'll take it. Cats.
2 things that should be at the top of everyone's
You
list.
heard it
Yeah.
here, folks.
and like, how is barbering on that same list?
There's cats. It's crazy.
You never know.
All right, so I want to ask one more question from you guys before we wrap this up. And it's not nearly as superficial as some of the things we've covered, but I really want to know what the educational experience of New England School of Barbering for you guys has helped you with personally as people, as individuals. Like, because I have a firm belief that in any situation, if you have put yourself in the mindset of learning, then you've opened your brain and your heart up to learning all sorts of things that you weren't planning on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, irregardless of hair, they've helped me through whether I'm just having an off day for a stupid reason, or if I need to talk to them about, like, I've had like sicknesses in my family, I've gone through a breakup, I've lost and gained weight, but like, they've been there for me through all of that, and it's cool that I can go to them no matter what like my issue is. If I'm just looking to someone to vent to, even if it's, I know they don't care about it maybe, but they still listen and they're great supporters. But yeah, it's cool to have people like that there, to be able to just be a great listener and support you, and then kick you in the ass and say, get shit done now. Because you have to do that sometimes, for sure.
Well, and even barbers need barbers for their therapy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Todd?
What was the original question? I was just listening. It was the level of it. Can you repeat it? Repeat the question, please.
So I want to know, like, how, since you've been in school and it is a learning environment, like, how have you grown and learned as an individual outside of just the profession of cutting hair? Because, I mean, it's next to impossible to learn something without learning more than you were planning.
Mm-hmm. Wow, where to go with that question? I feel like I've always had a growth mindset, but I feel like lately I've truly embraced that. I don't want to come off in a weird way, but everything that I've tried in the past, I've just at least been good at. Like, not maybe great, but it's like, okay, I got this, you know? So as Mrs. C would say, you don't got this. So, and not just with hair, but being okay with that, you know, coming in and having an off day and being like, okay, I'm still going to push myself. I'm still here to learn. And knowing myself, or learning myself, or almost feels like meeting yourself again, or a different part of you, you know? And being okay with all of the imperfections, and knowing that you'll never be perfect, but trying, you know, and just striving to become better each day, just even a little bit. And another thing that it's helped me do is, because coming from the gym world, it was always like, okay, suck that shit up, get to work. And now I see new students come in and I'm like, okay,
I feel
Mrs.
that.
C is in the office. I'm going to go over and tell them it's going to be okay, and that if they want to go in the basement and cry, that's fine. I'll
show you the spot.
Yeah, I'll hold your hand while you cry and have a breakdown.
You'll see a puddle stain down there.
Yeah.
You know, but opening myself up to even communicate with people, because I don't want to say that I'm totally introverted, but I tend to keep to myself. And as you said earlier, can't really do that in this field. So it's pushed me, you know. And I'm not behind my own chair yet, but when I worked at a bar or a restaurant, I could always sort of create like a character. and become that. And I'm sure it's the same with barbering, and I just have to find what that is for people. And it might be different for every person. You know, maybe someone's having a terrible day and they need you to hold them, you know, together, or just hold them. Maybe they just need a hug. I don't know. Or somebody's having a great day and they need a cheerleader to sort of co-sign their amazing day. And so maybe it's different for everyone, but knowing that that's okay and I don't have to be this one sort of dimensional mindset person.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Well, I definitely think that even further beyond that, because you mentioned like playing a character, I think the major difference between a lot of professions, you can get away with playing somebody. This is one where you have to show different sides of yourself, and you know, your 20-sided die or how many ever faces that you have. We all are very capable of doing endless number of faces, but it's important to be genuine with whatever face that you're showing, because there is no fooling. When you're one-on-one with somebody, there's nowhere to hide. Like, there is no fooling. If they're inebriated, it's one thing, but for the most part, everybody in your chair is going to be sober. So, but it is very important to, number one, accept yourself for who you are and really recognize that, yes, this is who I am, and be okay with it, because you can't go to another place and grow if you don't know where you are. So knowing and accepting who you are now in the moment is phenomenal, and that's, especially if you're doing that in school, it sets you up for so much more success in the future of being able to be a growing and genuine person to not only your customers, but also the people you work with and work for. And that's one of the reasons why I love the podcast. It's like, it's the things we learn for life, like, because you can take those lessons and sprinkle those everywhere and they'll fit.
Yep.
And I think that's great. Like, that's why it's, you know, apply any principle and philosophy that we find in this barbering world that we're in, and plug it in any other part of your life, and it'll give you just as much good, which is phenomenal for me. And that's why I stay in the profession, and that's why I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming onto the podcast. I know I kind of wrangled you into it.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah.
I look forward to seeing the future of Hello Hair Co. and
Me too.
seeing you guys get to work.
So excited.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.